One. Good morning, everybody. Today is Sunday, August 16th, and speaking to you from an unusually small box on a corner of my phone, my name is Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Jason Booms in the regular size box.
And it's a much bigger box as well. And we welcome you to another edition of Forward Maryland. Today is our auspicious pre-DNC edition that I know many of you have been waiting with bated breath for mere minutes. Jason, have you ever attended a Democratic National Convention?
National convention, no. The closest I came was multiple state conventions. A good time was always had. Actually, both R and D ones. I got to say the D ones are always better events. But a national one, no. How about you?
I have been fortunate enough to go to part or all of the 92 convention in New York and the 96 convention in Chicago, which
nice.
was quite a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say to all my colleagues out there, all of our colleagues out there who are attending the 2020 convention, virtual as it may be, I hope you take in a lot of the meetings, a lot of the sessions. Unfortunately, the on-site partying will not be so much of a thing, but who knows? I don't know if there's Zoom socials or whatnot, but somehow, somehow I'm not sure it's quite the same. But still enjoy.
Sound advice. Sound advice.
So Jason and I have studiously broken down the convention schedule for all 4 days. Mm-hmm. And whereas we were want to talk about the rural caucus of the DNC and their meetings from 9 to 11 on Tuesday and Thursday of the convention and what may come out of that, we have decided instead to focus on the prime time lineup for each of the 4 days of the convention and bring to you what and who we suspect to see the highlights, the lowlights, offer some predictions, also talk about, what's not on here. So with that, let's just, no pun intended, zoom into Mondays. So I'm here in the Forward Maryland Learning Lab. And as we look at Monday's schedule, I see, and I'm not going to stick the phone on the screen because doggone it, on the whiteboard because doggone it, it's so small. So Monday speakers, Jason, and these are all from 9 to 11. So that's one overarching comment I'm going to offer. Each of these nights seems like a lot from 9 to 11.
Yeah.
But Monday night, we get Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Representative Jim Clyburn, Senator Doug Jones of Alabama, Bernie Sanders, and Michelle Obama. Jason, your first thoughts.
Well, my first thought is, just going larger and a bit historical. Oh, and by the way, the theme of that first night is We the People, which, very critical, very American theme, which I take to be of great importance, as is evidenced by this tat. But yes, We the People, embedded upon my skin.
He just got that last night, ladies and gentlemen.
Actually, probably about 15 years as I think about it. And looking at the speakers, I think with this convention, it's a decent cross section of the Democratic Party. This promises to be, I believe, a relatively peaceful convention in some regards. I'm just thinking back historically. I don't think we're going to see any Abraham Ribicoff moments from like the '68 convention where he chastised Mayor Daley from the podium about if George McGovern is our next president, we will not see Gestapo tactics on the streets of Chicago, which unfortunately is still a very timely thing to say. But looking at the speakers from that very first night, obviously the star attraction is going to be former First Lady Michelle Obama. I hope she has a good amount of minutes in which to present her remarks to the nation. Um, the one to watch, I would think, and we're always fond of taking a look at who might use this as a stepping stone to their future national prominence. My expectation is that Whitmer probably has the most to gain or lose by turning in a solid performance. So I'm very curious to see what happens there. And Doug Jones, I just wish that he often reminds himself of how he got to where he is and serving in the Senate. And I would like to see a bit more reflection talking about the importance of the progressive base. Although I'm sure his spot there is meant to talk about the national reach of the party and how we can win in the South. I'm not expecting a heck of a lot from Senator Jones, but I'm hopeful we'll hear some worthwhile remarks. What are your thoughts?
So a few things. So as I remember, these conventions have always been 4 nights. The Monday, the first day had generally been, as memory serves, the night of the Keystone, of the keynote convention, keynote speech, setting the stage, kind of giving a pencil sketch of this is what is going to be filling in the blanks over the next 3 days. So kind of, setting the stage. Tuesday has generally been what's called losers night. And also, all the unsuccessful candidates from the primary come and speak. Also, some of the, senior statesmen, elder statespeople speak on Tuesday. Wednesday's about the VP. Thursday's about the presidential nominee.
Yep.
This is a very different schedule and themes overall, and so I'm kind of thinking not so much into what each of those nights is themed, although I'm looking forward to discussing the others, but I kind of see this as not quite a setting the stage for the remaining 3 nights, but I find this Monday evening as, if this is a word, definitional.
Yeah.
This is what it means to be a Democrat in the year 2020, because on this list, I see people from the more progressive side. I see people from the more, centrist side. I don't see anybody who is within the Democratic Party, controversial. Bernie Sanders is, I think, probably on this list the most progressive person there, but I wouldn't say that Bernie is somebody who, raises ire in a lot of people. Bernie's Bernie, and Bernie does what Bernie does. Technically, of course, Bernie's not a Democrat, but hey, that's another matter. And everybody in the Democratic Party loves Michelle Obama. So how are you going to argue with this? In terms of people, there's a little bit of futurism here. I look at Cortez Masto, Cuomo, Whitmer as being, these are 3 people who, should God knows, what we don't want to happen. These are 3 people who could help propel the party forward. I see your point about Whitmer and her having the most to possibly gain. I'm also going to say that I think shoulder to shoulder with her, I think Cuomo. I think that there is maybe no political figure on the Democratic Party. I don't think there's very many who wish that they had a bigger launching pad for 2020, but I think Andrew Cuomo is one of them because his star rose meteorically in the first 2 to 3 months of the pandemic, and now as the new head of the National Governors Association, as succeeding Larry Hogan, this is now, his time to kind of set forth. Plus, there has been that thing with the Cuomo family and Democratic national conventions and running for the highest office in the land.
Plane is gassed up. It's ready to go.
Oh, it definitely is. And should November 4th bring about the unexpected, I would expect the Cuomo 2024 armored personnel carrier to start its listening tour of Iowa and New Hampshire. So I think he and Whitmer share the most to gain. The most to lose. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at a lot of the state polling sites. I've been looking at some of these, sites like PredictIt, 538. Doug Jones really has a tough way to go in the state of Alabama. And I'm not going to say he has the most to lose, although, he's almost in a can't win situation. I think the more, I almost think that visibility de facto hurts him at this point. So I will be very interested to see what he comes out to say, because I think that his hopes do ride upon motivating a diverse Democratic base in his own state. So it'll be interesting to see to what part of the party he speaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for our generation, the standard of really following things up is probably Bill Clinton '88. And as we know, he's capable of where people applauded as he said he was wrapping up. And obviously he was able to come back from that. So it's not a definitive career breaker to turn in a widely panned speech. I am looking forward to the remarks, obviously, from Senator Sanders. Actually, I just received this in the mail yesterday. The latest copy of Jacobin talking about after Bernie. And this is his moment to provide a speech on sort of the path forward and what will happen with the left wing of the Democratic Party. I think we can safely say he probably does not have another presidential run in him. So I will definitely be curious to see how full-throated voice he gives in support of his democratic socialist principles. So I think that's going to be an interesting speech to watch. And also, I do think that having Congressman Clyburn speak on the first night, given his importance in helping with the nomination of Vice President Biden, is definitely a well-deserved slot in addition to his leadership role that he has in Congress.
So is Bernie's speech a call out to his supporters? Does he ascend into some sort of elder statesperson role in the Democratic Party? More so by this, it's all right to vote for Joe. I mean, does he go there? Please vote for Joe. Damn it, do not vote for Trump. I mean...
Yeah, because especially... Oh, sorry, you faded for a second.
I mean, could this happen? I mean, he was so excoriated in 2016 by all the Clintonites, and now does the Democratic Party warmly throw its arms around Bernie and thank him for his service by rousing huzzas at the virtual convention?
Yeah, it makes the most sense to do that. I mean, and frankly, in some way, I think there was greater antipathy towards Jerry Brown in '92 among the Clinton supporters than there will be from the Biden supporters to the Sanders folks, because the Sanders folks are a particularly energized wing of the party. And I think there's a recognition that they want to have everyone inside the tent. So I am assuming it will be, they'll be treated relatively warmly. And I think the fact that the nomination was decided relatively early for a variety of reasons, you don't have those rough feelings like you perhaps did in 2016 when the battle went to the very end. So now that the party has had a chance to pull itself together, I would expect Bernie's folks to be well treated.
Very good. Well, let's move on to Tuesday. And it's sad because I did color code everything to look like the Democratic National Convention. It looks very official. I mean, complete with the use of the appropriate sans serif font. On Tuesday evening, we have the keynote, and I want to get to that.
Yeah.
Sally Yates, the former Assistant Attorney General. I almost said Amy, but her uncle Chuck Schumer, John Kerry, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I know what T-shirt you'll be wearing to Bill Clinton, and Dr. Jill Biden. So to me, this night looks like, the case against Donald Trump, as one would hear from Yates, Schumer, Kerry, with his experience as a former Secretary of State, could speak to all the foreign policy faux pas. AOC could certainly speak to, the bastardization of anything progressive, although I would imagine she's also going to use the opportunity to prod the party in her own inimitable manner. Bill Clinton about, I think, and this could be ironic if this is a theme, the loss of respect and the loss of togetherness and unity. I mean, having made his presidency a lot about triangulation and about working with Republicans on certain items. And then Joe Biden to produce a little bit of hope at the end, and that there's better coming and that there's change on the way. But yet, so here's the thing. So this Monday lineup was the lineup as of this morning when I last looked. Friday, when I looked, there was a name on here that's no longer on the Monday agenda, and that is the former governor of Ohio and Representative John Kasich. And in fact, he's not on this agenda at all. The Tuesday keynote is notably blank, and I don't know who that's going to be. I haven't really seen a lot of speculation about who that's going to be. I don't think that's going to be Kasich, but what are you making of this Tuesday, Jason?
Well, and I'll admit, according to what I'm looking at, Kasich was still on the list for Tuesday. I'd have to see if his name has been removed. My understanding of the keynote is they're going to have 17 individual people do their own sort of segments as part of the keynote. The most prominent of whom, my understanding is, will be Stacey Abrams. So in that regard, like, all right, great. I wanted her to have a prominent role, and if she's doing a keynote or at least part of it, that's something. And they're going to also have some other. There's going to be, and at 46 years old, my understanding is she's going to be the oldest of the keynoters. It's going to be a lot of folks, younger representation, people that are in swing states, particularly in like newly elected congressmen in, for example, Pennsylvania. I know there's a couple of folks that will be speaking during the keynote. Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez will be one of the speakers. So I think this looks like a future of the party in some ways, a presentation, but again, hitting on that leadership theme. I will admit, I'm not overly enthused at the prospect of seeing former President Clinton deliver any remarks. In my dream world, it'd be a joint presentation with him speaking, well, if he has to speak at all, it'd be him speaking with former President Bush in a joint endorsement of Joe Biden. Maybe that'll be a surprise they're holding for us, but Clinton by himself, I don't know. What does he get you?
Well, I mean, Jimmy Carter's not on this list, but you have to give a former president a time to speak on the podium. I don't think you could. I love the idea about George W. Bush. I have a feeling that we will see that statement come out by the time it's all said and done. And I did not, by the time it's all said and done in November, Postal Service willing. But I did not know that about the keynote. And yeah, this is as of this morning. So Kasich is now no longer on here at all. So not sure if maybe he's moved up to before prime time, or if they're juggling him around, because there was at least one interesting addition that I'll get to on Friday of another former primary candidate who was off the agenda and now has a really good spot on Friday, or on Thursday, I should say, and that's Andrew Yang. But I like what I mean from what you told me about the keynote, and I appreciate that. That sounds excellent. I also have to wonder, how many of those, are cross-party. How many of those 17 people might be current Republicans or former Republicans? I mean, if at 46, when you said the words, at 46, Stacey Abrams is the oldest person on that amongst those 17, I instantly thought of a Republican woman in her 30s named Meghan McCain. And wouldn't it be interesting if she said something about how rotten this president is and how he's failed to lead?
Because a McCain will do that.
Right.
A Cruz, unfortunately, doesn't have the guts to do that.
No, absolutely not. No. Your wife's an ugly dog, and I'm just gonna keep voting for this guy. And your father killed John Kennedy, and I'm just gonna keep voting for this guy. Just absurd. So yeah, I mean, this definitely does. I do hear you about future, but I think, to me, do you agree that this lineup really looks like the case against Trump?
Yes, both from a rule of law perspective, especially with Yates. I'm just hoping for the best with John Kerry. The one thing I did worry about was seeing so many senators. Well, there's only 2, I guess, but that still seems like a lot of senators, and their lapse into DC speak, which I know both Schumer and Kerry are capable of. I know they'll be showing some Delaware love. Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, the sole Congresswoman from Delaware, will be speaking that night. Curious to see what she's all about. Yeah, I can see it definitely being the case against. I am saddened, of course, that AOC only gets a minute. I don't want to raise expectations, but I'll be fascinated to see what she can do in 1 minute. And so, yeah, just showing the absence of leadership in the country and showing some, folks who have a certain level of gravitas would be good to see on stage. So net looks like a decent night.
A minute?
My understanding is she has 1 minute to deliver her remarks.
That sounds fairly ignorant. So as I looked at it on the schedule, all of these people are listed for the time between 9 and 11.
Mm-hmm. But you know what, though? I thought about that, and yeah, I think she should have more time, number one, especially if Kasich is going to have a role, which I understand from a national unity perspective, he'd be a decent get. Bush would be better. But, 1 minute, in the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln's speech was quite short and very impactful, and I expect her to deliver remarks that will be easily viral and will make a difference. So even though it's a minute, I'm sure it'll be a good one.
Excellent. I'm hoping it's more than a minute. Let's go to Wednesday because the minute resonates as I'm looking at this lineup for Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Senator Elizabeth Warren. I have a exclamation point after the performance by Billie Eilish, who I would admit, Elizabeth Warren knew who she was last year in the campaign. I had no clue. I had to go look her up.
I know the name, that's it.
The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico, Gabby Giffords, Kamala Harris, and former President Barack Obama. What make you of that lineup, kind sir?
Definitely 2 tiers. Kamala Harris, a great speaker, and I'm definitely looking forward to what the vice presidential nominee has to say. It's always a delight hearing from former President Barack Obama. I honestly can't say I'm enthused by basically anyone else on there. Elizabeth Warren, at her best, it might be fun, quirky, wonky, techie, and all kinds of good things, but I can't necessarily say I'm spellbound by the thought of seeing her presentation. Uh, Governor Tony Evers, all right. I mean, Midwest swing state of Wisconsin, fine. Pelosi and Hillary as speakers. Well, frankly, I'd rather listen to Chelsea than Hillary. So at least it's more of a generational thing. But I understand why she's on the stage, and I suppose Speaker Pelosi has to be there. But sure, I think there's two, maybe three decent speakers that night. Let's
Yeah.
see.
Well, so here's what I would have done. And Stephanie Cutter, if you're out there, I know you can still make changes. So you may want to think about it. I would have switched Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden. I actually think Elizabeth Warren would have been a fun, meaningful, rabble-rousing way to end up the second night. And then also, if I remember right, the spouse of the presidential candidate had always spoken on the Wednesday night.
That sounds right, yes.
To end it up.
Yeah.
And I think that, even after Barack Obama and Kamala Harris, I think it would have been cool to have had Joe Biden, speak, do a little thing like Nancy Reagan did with Ronnie in 1984, waving to Ronnie back in the hotel, he's at home. Of course, they're both going to be home. So, maybe Joe wanders into the dining room when Jill's giving her talk. Who knows? And is like, where are my shows? But I think that would have been cool. Billie Eilish is ridiculous. I think there's no need for that on there. I mean, this is just, plain and simple pandering to the young millennial and Gen Z vote. I think Nancy Pelosi also would have been somebody to have had on Tuesday. In terms of getting back to what I was saying about themes, I don't see this theme as about the VP and about setting the stage for the nomination of Joe Biden. I guess I see this theme as, if anything, starting to make the case about why Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are good for America. And to that, I think you only need really three speakers that night. I think you need Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Kamala Harris. I think that's it. So this Wednesday, I don't know. This strikes to me as a little bit of, it was designed by a harlequin. It's a lot of different pieces of fabric that hopefully when we stitch them together, it looks great, but no guarantee.
You hear so many things about Hillary Clinton as a person, as just being very different than the one who's appeared in the public consciousness really for the last 28 years. I'm hoping to see a Hillary we haven't seen before, just letting it all out and sort of, giving us the opportunity to say, well, for those of us who didn't vote for her in 2016, wow, I made a terrible choice. Now, maybe there's very few voters that actually fall into that category of being persuadable that they really messed up. But I'm hoping she shows us a reason why she deserved to be on the national scene. So from that capacity, yeah, I mean, if there had been four speakers, Obama, Kamala Harris, Clinton, and Jill Biden, I think that would have been a dream slate for this evening, or for that Wednesday evening.
Yeah, I would agree, in getting back to your earlier comments about why is Bill Clinton on there. I would suggest that, again, as with her husband, used properly, she could be very powerful. I think I also have to ask the question, and this may not be popular with some of our more progressive viewers and listeners, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why is Gabby on there? I could see having her and Mark Kelly on there. I think in terms of the future of the party, Mark Kelly is completely wiping the deck with Martha McSally in Arizona. And so I think in terms of pointing towards the future of the party, I'll be interesting to see how they use Congresswoman Giffords. I think she's awesome. I really like her. But the shift in energy there seems to have gone from her towards her husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I'm glad she's there. And definitely given what's going on in the country, I think if she can speak, I mean, we know, obviously one of the pivotal reasons why she's there is a tragedy that befell her, that fortunately she was able to recover from. So I'm curious to see what she has to say. And in the idea of having representation, I think overall she was a good choice. I mean, I haven't really heard her deliver any prolonged remarks recently, so I'm not sure how good a public speaker she is. But I look forward to seeing what she has to offer.
Yeah, I mean, and I know I've sounded harsh, and I don't mean
Jesus, Bill.
She has no place on this convention floor. Of course she does. But I guess I'm thinking about it more in terms of the mishmash. Wednesday is sounding more like, well, these are all the people we wanted to bring you on Tuesday, but we didn't have the time.
Yeah.
So now we're giving you Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I would say that again, Stephanie Cutter, please call me. Mm-hmm. I'll give you my digits. But I would actually, I'm going to submit that of higher prominence than the issue of handgun safety is racial injustice in this country. And other than Kamala and Barack, who will speak to it as part of sweeping, overarching remarks about many, many issues, there is nobody on this list who's on Wednesday night who speaks to racial injustice. And I think, as I'm looking forward to Thursday's list, I think you take Keisha Lance Bottoms and you put her in that spot. And I think you move Gabby to Friday, or to Thursday.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to see what Governor Grisham might say. I mean, I think the name that leaps out, if you're talking about a more perfect union and looking at the speakers that they currently have lined up, this would have seemed to have been a great night for Julian Castro. I mean, I just don't see, or a prominent Muslim American speaker. Ilhan Omar just won her primary. Keith Ellis, I mean, that's just Minnesota right there. But it seems like they could have had a bit broader representation on that night, and they didn't quite.
I didn't think they quite hit the home run. No. I think they hit a solid double off the wall, but it didn't clear the fence.
Yeah. Let's
look at Thursday. Because I frankly think that Thursday does clear the fence, and I think it clears it, with Mantelian proportion. Because on Thursday, we being the Democratic National Committee, gives you Senator Cory Booker, Mayor Pete, the Dixie Chicks, or wait a minute, the Chicks, they're the Chicks. California Governor Gavin Newsom, the aforementioned Keisha Lance Bottoms, Senator Tammy Baldwin from the home state of Wisconsin, also one of two openly LGBT U.S. senators, Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, Andrew Yang, former 2020 primary competitor and businessman / venture capitalist, and certainly not least, Vice President Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. That's a stacked lineup.
It's a good lineup. And given the theme is America's promise, I mean, this could be read in multiple different ways. The promise of a Biden administration, the promise of, the Democratic Party writ large and what we can offer the nation as a competing governing vision. Obviously some huge names on there, people with great personal stories. So in that regard, yeah, I think it's a pretty solid night. I'm not sure if I'd give it a home run, maybe a triple, but
Say a triple's harder than a home run, Jason. That may even be higher.
well, just because of the relative rarity. Although an inside park home run would be nice, but
that would be even harder. I'm going to double down and I'm going to call this an inside the park home run. So inside the park home run in a Japanese ballpark, not even something like the Polo Grounds.
Ooh, nice. But what was it to right field? To what? I mean, it was a short fence. I want to say 254 on the dead right, but I'm not sure.
Oh, in the Polo Grounds?
Yeah.
I think it was more like 290. You're thinking of, I think, the LA Coliseum, which was 254 with a 31-foot fence to left field, down the left field line.
Yeah. Okay, that could be it. Awesome. But why do we know these dimensions? But
why do we know any of them?
But Mayor Pete, Senator Booker, these are faces we've seen recently, and so I'm curious to see how they'll do pitching for the party and the nominee.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep saying it. I love everything about this lineup, top to bottom. I am quite pleased, actually, that they found spot on the primetime agenda for Andrew Yang. Again, other than, I don't think you just go to the vice presidential nominee and say, oh, well, now we've covered our Asians as well. But you have Tammy Duckworth, who's Asian American, and Andrew Yang, who is Asian American, both on the same night. I think his message is very forward-thinking, very aspirational, and I guess I am seeing more. And I guess maybe this is my overarching question about this convention, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes, which will be how well directed everything is. Because something I think we're both saying is that, well, if used properly, they can be blankety blank. Yeah. The averse to that is that, well, if left up to their own devices, they could all go blinkety blunk. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot in what Joe's running on, which I don't think matches line for line with the Democratic Party's platform that was adopted, but also doesn't match up with what a lot of people wanted in the primary campaign. Doesn't line up with Andrew Yang's major raisons d'etre during the campaign. Not so much with Pete Buttigieg's or even Elizabeth Warren's or Bernie Sanders. So, what's going to be, I think, fascinating is how this is all molded into what I think the overwhelming message is going to be of this campaign, which is that Democrats are unified. I believe that there is this intense groundswell to join together, get this thing done in November. Let's get 50 or 51 senators. And then when we get to January, Biden and Harris are going to have their work cut out for them, because they're going to have to figure it out. Mm-hmm. Because also the peril that's going to befall them is, come 2022, whiplash in terms of congressional losses. Yeah. But first they've got to win. Yeah. And so I kind of see this night's theme as how we win. Mm-hmm. and it's in terms of policy, it's in terms of approach, it's in terms of personality. And that, I guess, is why I'm using my inside the park reference.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody on this list for Thursday, I think, is an intensely popular person. I mean, their negatives are very low. Their polarity is very low. Maybe it is an explanation as to why we get Gabby Giffords on Wednesday as opposed to Thursday, because the issue of handgun violence is a polarizing one. But it's not polarizing amongst the Democratic base, which is still what I'm wondering about that. But if they're programming Thursday, and they're programming Thursday as this is when the most curious people, my premise is that there are very few truly undecided voters, but they do need to increase the enthusiasm level for Joe. And if you're setting forth a night's events to raise the enthusiasm level for Joe to the stratosphere, I think this is who you have.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody else, again, you look on that Wednesday, wow, what person other than Michelle Lujan Grisham makes you go, oh yeah, but then also every single person on this list, other than Kamala Harris maybe, has the opportunity to produce negative feelings amongst the undecided.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you. And there's definitely some folks that may be considered more polarizing amongst the broad electorate. The thing I find interesting is in some ways, this is more of the theme is America's promise, but it feels like it could be more of a national unity themed evening. Specifically, I think you can make a case this is juxtaposing sacrifice versus selfishness. I mean, you take a look at, you've got a couple of people that are, Buttigieg and Duckworth have national security, military service of the country. Cory Booker has going back to when he was mayor and sort of the very Spartan lifestyle that he did to be, seen as one of the people back when he was mayor. And Joe Biden, obviously, through the course of his long career, he's suffered loss, and he's definitely, I think, sacrificed for the country. Comparing that to the selfishness and the self-aggrandizement of Trump, I think that could be a very powerful theme. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what Senator Duckworth has to say. I do expect there'll be a couple of people that will be like, wow, she really deserved the serious consideration she received for the Veep nominee based on her speech. We'll be disappointed if she doesn't hit that mark. And similarly for Tammy Baldwin, I'm definitely curious to see how her speech might turn out.
Yeah, well, both of those people you mentioned, Jason, are still, pretty much not known on the national stage. I mean, geeks like us know who they are, but by and large, the population doesn't know them. So it will be interesting to see how they're received. My take is that they will both be received very well and very interestingly. Of this entire lineup, who do you think is most likely to give us our signature line, if there is a signature line from the 2020 Democratic Convention? Most likely to give us our paragraph on there are no blue states and red states, there are only purple states. I still believe in a place called hope. Hopefully not our in conclusion, my fellow Americans. But it could be. Doesn't have to be a plus. It could be a minus. Maybe, don't have to give me one, but maybe two or three. Who do you think are the most likely to give us that signature moment?
And this is the reason I give that last night a triple, because I am so apprehensive about what Joe Biden's accepted speech might sound like. The Ribicoff statement, that was an off the cuff remark. You can control to a very good extent what everyone else says by saying you will stick to the speech, or God help me, you'll never work in Democratic politics again. I mean, some folks can be threatened. Obviously, maybe not a Hillary Clinton or President Obama. What do they care? But I think you'll have a lot of discipline regarding the remarks, because no one wants to risk something that takes them off message. With Joe Biden, I just don't think you know which Joe Biden might show up. And I'm hoping that he has the line that we'll all remember favorably coming out of it. There may be a new superstar that emerges nationally. I can't tell you who that might be yet, although there's Baldwin and Duckworth, I think, might make good possibilities, as well as Bottoms on that last night. But I hope that Joe Biden is the one who's got the line. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I'm going to give you three.
Mhm.
And two of these you might expect. The third one, I'm going to highly doubt that you would suspect. Now, to your point about Joe, another thing about this Thursday night lineup is that Joe doesn't have to go out and be the bulldog and go out and viciously attack, and get ahead of himself and start saying malarkey and folks, what does, I mean, if he starts going down the path of, Trump says Joe Biden is against God, I mean, I can see Joe laying out a few, working a little blue and maybe pissing some people off, and starting to anger some faith people. But, the three who I'm going to give are Kamala Harris, number one, because she is extremely well skilled at that. Michelle Obama, because she is popular and she can speak into those, general themes. Although I will say that when they go low, we go high didn't work. And the third person I'm going to give you is Gavin Newsom, because being the governor of the largest state in the country, having gone through the coronavirus thing through its iterations, I mean, even, being one of the few blue states where the virus is ticking back up and where he's actually had to roll stuff back. And, Governor Cuomo, he could be in that third spot, but being the head of the National Governors Association, he doesn't have to really, he doesn't have to do that. Plus, he doesn't really have much of a place. But amongst this lineup on Thursday, who has the president's lack of leadership most directly affected in their ability to do their job over the last 6 months? It's not the chicks. It's clearly Governor Newsom. And so maybe the most biting, damning line against this president comes from him, or maybe, but the other two, Michelle Obama and Kamala Harris, I can see as being the source of the most soaring aspirational line.
I can see that. And I definitely think that this is really an opportunity for Kamala Harris to shine. And so I'm really hoping that she delivers some great and memorable remarks. I do think there are some other folks. Obviously, we haven't, and yeah, Gavin Newsom. It'll be interesting to see him at perform on the national scene. There are a few names we haven't mentioned yet. Bloomberg, is he still on the list for a non-prime spot?
Of this morning, so no, he was not on the list unless if he's been. Now they did list for each night. They had non-specific pre-shows.
Yeah,
between 7 to 9. So I have to wonder if some of these people, Kasich, Bloomberg, are not moved on to the pre-show.
Yeah. Well, if he pays his bills, maybe Bloomberg has a a right to speak, maybe for 15 seconds. But
Feel bitter about that minute. I think she's going to get more than a minute.
I hope so. But and there's some other folks. I mean, I think Deb Haaland. I believe I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, of New Mexico, and Sharice Davids of Kansas, both two Native American congresswomen. It would have been nice to see some Native representation among some primetime speakers as well, beyond the one member of the Navajo Nation who's going to be one of the 17. But I mean, as far as a broad theme is concerned, it does seem as though this seems like the kind of convention where there should be a decent bounce. Maybe not the bounces we've seen historically, where you've seen nominees gain 15, 17 points in a relatively short period of time, because I think America is so fundamentally balkanized that there's not going to be a big bump up. But I think they could increase the enthusiasm levels with the Democratic activists. Maybe some folks that are not keyed in start paying attention and start thinking, well, this Biden seems like a decent guy. So if it serves that purpose, I think that's victory enough coming out of it.
So omissions that I see,
Mm-hmm.
I know I keep going back to the whole handgun violence issue. I don't see on here anybody who can speak to or who suffered or was part of Parkland High School or the nightclub in Orlando or the Las Vegas shooting.
Yeah.
You
mean like real people who were there and can talk about their, yeah, agree.
Correct. Or the organizations, that have arisen from those shootings. Those, I think those would be very powerful. The certain runners up of the Veep Stakes, Karen Bass, Susan Rice, Val Demings. I don't see any of them on here. And a name I will throw out, and if only I could do so little, I could get Annie Leibovitz to take my picture too. Beto O'Rourke.
I was thinking about him the other day.
Where is Beto? He ain't nowhere.
I guess he's not on his journey, I guess.
He's got his dog. He's got his pickup. He's driving across Texas, getting people to vote for Democrats. Where is he? He's not in Milwaukee. He's not on Zoom. Well, we know Beto's on Zoom.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, but maybe we'll see him reappear in some future cycle. Cori Bush, that is one name I think we should see, given her Ferguson activism, Democratic nominee for Congress in Missouri. I think she would have been a very good choice to speak to some of the racial justice issues in our country. And I know she's relatively new to the scene, but I think a role could have been found for her.
Agreed. Yes. We shall see. Who knows? 36 hours out, changes still could be made. But
but won't you miss the fanfare, the balloons dropping, and the confetti, and everyone on the podium together?
That could be such a double-edged sword, because national conventions have given us the very awkward handshake between Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy, and
he had to chase him across the podium.
He gave us George W. Bush boogalooing half drunk in the background during his father, at the end of his father's convention in 1988. The Al and Tipper Gore, get a room moment.
Oh, God.
I probably don't miss that. I mean, for people who are going, and if they've never been before, they won't know what they won't see. But, that is the time to get all sorts of cool souvenirs off of the floor, because all those little placards and, cards and pieces of cardboard are instant collectibles. And You
Mhm.
know, they're, you know, you just fill up a bag full of them and take them home. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm missing any of that fanfare, to be honest.
Mhm.
Are
Sure.
you?
Yeah, I like that sort of thing, but and maybe nostalgia. It's a war on conventions, I tell you. But
Good
the
lots of words on lots of things lately.
and just this thinking back to some of the highlights. I mean, will we see a moment as electric as Reverend Jackson's speech to the '88 Democratic Convention? I mean, I'm just hoping that while it would be nice to see some highlights like that, I just hope for a solid, uneventful convention, because I think if we're trying to find a new normalcy, maybe we don't need all the pizzazz that Paul Zongas can bring. I don't know, but just give us something that we can say. Oh, there's something that looks like it should be our government.
Well, I was quite buoyed to know that Stephanie Cutter was the person in charge of programming this, because I enjoyed her on Crossfire, and I know she was in the Obama White House,
Yep.
and I believe she worked for Bill Clinton at some point at a lower level communications job. So she's a very experienced, very savvy hand. She's our age, so she's definitely, in tune with generational issues. And then I also read a very interesting piece on Jen O'Malley Dillon, who is the Biden campaign manager, today in the papers, and she also has a fascinating background. And no, even though she lives in Maryland, she is of no relation to former Governor Martin O'Malley. So I do think that, there's so much at stake. I do think they're going to do a great job. So, things that I can see which would have been on a par with, the Clint Eastwood talking to an empty chair debacle in 2012, people with zippy Zoom backgrounds, each speaker kind of does that Zoom transition when it looks like they're beaming up or beaming off in Star Trek. That sort of junk. I don't think we'll see that. I think we'll see something that will be informative and that will talk to people and that will, be of interest to people. But I also do not begrudge them their charge, because they are trying to make something which frankly had become a little bit of an anachronism interesting.
Yeah.
And interesting during, here we go again, these unprecedented times. So, I think I think they've done their best. There are certainly, we've both spent this time, to kind of nitpick around the edges about things that would have been good switcheroonies and switcheronies. But I think this could promise to be a very interesting and informative convention. And I agree with you on the bounce, for the simple reason that, again, my premise is that I don't think there are that many undecided voters.
Yeah.
And I think the balance that Democrats have to play is, is not to go into running this campaign not to lose.
Yeah.
Because as sports tells us, that's the only way to lose.
Yeah.
But, to use a sailing metaphor, to tack, to keep the wind, keep the breeze, keep pace, keep feeding off of that breeze, but also not make mistakes, and not realize that there's other boats in the race, and there's a big old boat full of steam that's powered on dung that will have its turn in another week.
Fair enough. I do think one last because I know we're about an hour, but I am very curious to see how good a job that Karine Jean-Pierre does as the vice presidential nominee's chief of staff. She's a total badass. I think she was a great selection, and I think that if she steers helps steer Kamala Harris's campaign, or her part of the campaign in the right direction. She will be a fantastic vice presidential chief of staff in the next administration. So. And I was just thinking of that because you mentioned O'Malley, and Jean-Pierre worked for O'Malley's very brief 2016 campaign. But they're making good staff moves. Cutter, Jean-Pierre. So this bodes well.
I hope so. I'm thinking good thoughts.
Yeah.
And next week, and there will hopefully be a interim episode, but next week we will think nothing but bad thoughts about in our Republican National Committee preview. So that is something you do not want to miss if you want to get your yayas out about Trump and Pence.
Will Ted Nugent fire a gun during his remarks? Stay tuned.
I don't think it's will he, it's how many. So, Jason, anything in closing?
Just stay safe out there and just soak in the convention goodness.
It has yet been another day that the police officers who were responsible for the death of Breonna Taylor have not been arrested.
Yep.
And wondering what's going on with that, as well as so many other things. So along with Jason Booms, my name is Bill Woodcock. And I hope you enjoy your Democratic Convention watching and that you've enjoyed this edition of Forward Maryland. Thanks for listening or watching, folks. Have a great day. Take care.